All right, everyone. We know it is getting late into the evening, and you may still have homework to do. So we're going to go ahead and get started. You should be in the session on making the most of a college visit. My name is Brittany Slaughter. I work for Elon University, which is a mid-sized private university located in North Carolina.
And I'm Caitlin James, and I am the regional recruitment manager based right here in San Diego, as we both are, for the Ohio State University. So, like the Ohio State University is located in Columbus, Ohio, the state capital, and we are the like states full of a lot of
Quick show of hands. How many of you have maybe already visited a college campus? Anyone yet? Oh, awesome. You guys want to come up and talk about what we want to talk about today is, as you are in the college research process, hopefully at some point you have the opportunity to, have boots on the ground on a college campus. That can be at any stage in the process. We're going to talk about, how to best plan for that, what types of questions to be asking. But really one of the reasons that you want to get on a campus is to get some perspective. Caitlin and I really, really love coming to high schools, meeting students where they're at, talking to them at college fairs. There's only so much information that she and I can give you. There's only so much you can read in a brochure or in a U.S. News and World Report college guide. It's really important for you as the student and for parents supporting your students in this process for them to get perspective as to what does it really feel to leave Southern California and go to Columbus, Ohio, or go to Elon, North Carolina. What does the state feel like? What does the environment feel like? Because what I might think about something might feel totally different to Caitlin. So it's really important, students, if at some point in this process you're able to get on the campus. Of those of you who have visited a college campus, how many of those college campuses were in California? Is it a California school you visited? Out of state? Out of state, okay. A little bit of both. But it's important to get a different perspective. We are really lucky to live here in Southern California. We're, typically not far from the beach, the desert, the mountains, fun things to do. But you go to other parts of the country or even other parts of the world, that's going to be different. So it's really important to develop that different perspective and experience something different than the environment that you've grown up in. Many colleges will use that college visit to really take a pulse on, are you very interested in this school? Certainly, I'm not going to hold it against a student if they haven't visited before they've applied. But if I see you visiting at some point, not something that my institution happens to track, that could potentially and positively impact your admissions decision. Caitlin, is demonstrated interest something that Ohio State tracks? It is not. See, very different. And every college will do something a little bit differently. So demonstrated interest is always something you can ask a college rep about. Don't be embarrassed about that. If they say, yes, it's something we track, or in Caitlin's case, no, it isn't. But that could be a reason that you are visiting a campus. And then I think most importantly, students, you're going to be investing 4 years in college. And that time is not just going to be spent in a classroom, but you're going to be in that campus community. So again, students, hopefully you're getting to see yourself there, and parents, hopefully you are helping your student to see themselves there and not you seeing yourself at the college, because we're not admitting you, we're admitting your student to the college. So.
A couple of things I'll add too, I think, going back just one slide, is just talking about the why, right? Why are you doing this? Why is this a place that you want to attend? Why do you see yourself being there? I tell a lot of my students, especially coming from California, similar to North Carolina, I know we're kind of unique being out-of-state schools, but the fact that, Californians also bring a lot of perspective to that student population. I mean, we literally live here in San Diego in California because California is a very important state to our institution. So first off, that should say a lot. We really want you also to kind of seek out and try something else, and it's going to build your network. It's going to build a lot of really special things for you. I know a lot of, when I first started recruiting out here in California, my favorite question that I did not understand was, so do you have weather? And I did not get that at first. And then now that I've lived here for a couple years, I was like, oh no, we really don't. It rained today, which was really nice, right? But there's a lot of different kinds of experiences, not just climates of people that you get to meet across all of these different things. So I think it's a really special thing because it's that transition not just from high school, from growing up under one roof, but transitioning. It's still kind of that home away from home. There's still going to be those support systems to kind of guide you, and you have to really make sure that it's a place that you feel comfortable with as well. So on the next slide. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about when you should be visiting colleges. I think some students are like, we want to visit on this particular time, or those kinds of things. So I think there's a couple theories that we're going to talk through of options and pathways. And so I think that there's some strategy that you can pull into this as well. It depends on the kind of experience that you want. So on the next one, we'll talk about a traditional campus and information session and tour on the next slide. Okay. So just to kind of a couple pros and cons to talk through this. So if you go to a high school or a university college, you can typically check out, they'll have a campus visit. So on their admissions page, you'll go to like a campus visit or a tour, see the campus, and you'll go on to that. You'll probably enter in some of your information and then sign up for a date. Typically, they will consist of an information session. You'll sit in just a room like this with peers of ours that are based on campus. They'll talk a little bit about the institution, give an overview of the admissions process, and then they will have some current students or whatever that might be lead you out on a tour. Sometimes it's even professional admission staff depending on the type of school that you're visiting. So that's kind of a traditional session. These are going to be what we mostly offer. This is what we would call kind of like our bread and butter. This is the kind of thing that you see in movies, what you might expect when you see a tour guide. Some of these are going to be limited based on availability. It depends on, I know my school's kind of unique. We're focused on the student, the current student. And if we don't have enough tour guides on that date, or sometimes in the summer, we can't offer campus tours. So that's one of the things is that you kind of have to be just overall in this process pretty flexible with us. So typically smaller groups, they might have the tour guides. They really want to make a personal experience. Maybe your group, when you go around the tour, you'll see some of the housing options. You'll see some of the big rec center, some of the main study spots. There'll be a couple things that maybe you might have access to in a smaller group setting, which is nice for the tour. And then usually at the end or in the beginning, you'll have time with the admissions counselor to answer any personal questions or things like that. Cons, depending on when you're wanting to visit, the capacity, it might fill kind of quickly depending on the date and when you're coming to visit. And this is just kind of the simple experience. It might be kind of limited if you're wanting a full expansive thing. Might not be as personalized as you want it to be because this is kind of the generic thing that we offer for every student. So that's one pathway that you could do that's pretty popular, and it's going to cover all ages as well. So whether you might be even a freshman in college, or excuse me, in high school, you can even attend something like this as well. All right. So then we have a large visit day. So this is when the university has planned everything. So the whole university has kind of coordinated. They have typically the admissions office, all of the staff on site, one big presentation, maybe one particular speaker gives the welcome session, and then they'll disperse you out into maybe an information session on specific or academic departments, maybe health professions if you're wanting to go into STEM or pre-med. Maybe you'll take a specific residence hall tour. Maybe you'll take individual campus tours at that point. So there's lots of variety and lots of programming. It also means that there's a lot of people there. Could feel a little overwhelming depending on if that's something you're ready for. But it's one of the few times that I think the whole university kind of comes out to be able to welcome all of our prospective students. So you'll see a lot more options. So this is when you can really make the best of it. But you also might find some hotels kind of fill up a little bit more just because of the amount of people that are coming in as well.
Yeah, what's an example of a large visit day that Ohio State offers?
Yeah, they used to call it Go Buckeye Day. So that's our big, some of our Buckeye for a Day kind of events that we do. So it'll be similar, pretty similar to that. It might start kind of early, gotta be ready and like wake up really early, get there at maybe 7:30. Sometimes some schools start them at 9:30, just depends on how big. But that's usually what we offer. You can kind of choose your own adventure. You can choose like your top 3 priorities. Even have financial aid and merit scholarships to come talk. And you can listen and hear that or have a presentation.
Similarly, we have something called a fall open house. We do it in spring as well. But it's a great time to get a lay of the campus, do a deeper dive into some of those academic programs, learn about study abroad experiences. There's student panels, and then we also want you to try the food. So we let you eat in any one of the dining halls that are on campus as well. And sometimes we'll do more focused, kind of larger visit day programs as well. So we have one program that's called Phoenix Fusion. Phoenix is our mascot, the whimsical bird that rose from the ashes. But our Phoenix Fusion Day is designed specifically for multicultural students who come, and they get to do an overnight with students on campus and really get that full experience. So there's a little bit of a variety, and every college will offer something different, but I think the points that Caitlin touched on here with the larger visit day, it can sometimes feel overwhelming, but it's also kind of exciting because as a student, you're potentially, engaging with and meeting other peers as well.
So this is an admitted student day. So this means that maybe you haven't visited the school before. This is maybe the first time. But this is also the most exciting time because this might be when you're making your college decision. So this is when the school wants to throw out all the ribbons and balloons and really celebrate you on this day. So again, the larger capacity is certainly available to you. It's tailored towards admitted students. So then you might have example, similar to the programming and those kind of unique opportunities we talked about before, but then they're really going to talk about maybe what's specific to you and what you you could be doing, you possibly could attempt and achieve once you're on campus there. And they might be more specific, more tailored to an individualized program that you've been admitted to because they know they only have so many days and they want to make sure to offer these specific days for you as well. So that's some of the pros with that too. And I think that that's kind of the fun part is you get the exciting thing is that now this is actually, hopefully an option for you. This is a place that's read your application. They really want you to be there. And this is where they show everything they got to try to have that for you. Challenges for some of that could be a little, again, overwhelming, kind of stressful. You're making that college decision. You're still looking at maybe affordability and all those kinds of other pieces, really wanting to make sure that this is someplace that you can be, not only see yourself, but financially make sure it's a good fit for you as well. There's a higher demand for set scheduling, so those days could fill up pretty quickly. I know our Buckeye-bound days do fill out quickly. And senior year gets busy. I know I have to tell my students April, I know, is such a busy time. That's usually when our spring break is, and that's when a lot of students, a lot of Californians want to visit at the same point. So you got to make sure that you're planning for some of those things in advance. So that's kind of some of the challenges that you have there as well. Anything you want to add to that too?
No, I think you covered it. Cool.
Awesome. And then the last one I kind of love. This is what I tell Californians, especially when you're going all the way across the country to either of our schools or any other institution, especially because you're going that distance. I know I have a lot of students that are similarly looking for schools all in the Midwest, and they want to kind of couple in the same time. So Wade asked me, well, when's the best time to visit? And I usually tell them when it works for you. This is going to be the best part of your schedule. A lot of schools will offer kind of like a self-guided walking tour that's going to hit some of the main points. It's going to share some of the same details. So it's going to offer the most flexibility for you. And it may be the most affordable. You got a cheap flight all the way to Chicago, and then you're going to rent a car and maybe drive around for a week. Awesome. That's great. I just want you to be able to see our campus, put boots on the ground, like Brittany said, and be able to see that we actually have green space and trees, and this is what Columbus looks like, because many of my students apply to Ohio State not having any idea what Columbus is or how big the city is, and how it's going to fit for them. But the con is it might not have exactly everything you want to do. I had a family that reached out and was like, hey, do you think that there's going to be any availability on December 24th? And I was like, I know not everyone celebrates Christmas, but unfortunately that is not a day, the university is traditionally closed, so unfortunately I don't have anything to be able to offer you. So, but that's when they're in town, that's when they're there. And so I said, here are a couple resources, here are my favorite things to do, and so hopefully they can still make the best of it. So these are the couple of shared things that we want to share. You want to share with them?
You touch on a good thing about giving the example of visiting on December 24th. If a campus is closed, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't still experience it. So reach out to us. We are happy to arrange for materials to be sent to you ahead of time. I know we offer a driving tour. So as long as you understand that, you know, if you're going to be in the area and you're going to experience something, you know, you're probably not going to see, you know, how that campus is buzzing around with students on campus, because there are not going to be any students there. So to one of Caitlin's very original points, and it's the why. Why are you wanting to see this campus? What are you hoping to learn from this experience? So I think as long as you're keeping in mind that if you're visiting in some of those off times, that you're not necessarily going to get a good measure of that. Don't write off the college right then, you know, do continue to do your research, write out the admissions process. Maybe you get to go to one of those attended student days eventually. You know, we have some other points on the bottom as well. It's, you know, it's never too early to visit. I love that almost everyone in here has already visited a college campus. We're really lucky here in San Diego to have a lot of different options for you to explore locally. But just because you haven't visited a campus doesn't mean you cannot apply to that college. I have a large percentage of students who don't come visit me in North Carolina until after they've learned that they've been admitted. And there's a lot of different ways, and we'll talk about this in just a second. There's a lot of different ways that you can still get to know a college without visiting. I think that actually might be one of the next slides. Oh, it's okay. We'll talk about it. It's okay. You want to go back? Yeah, this is good. Okay, so other things to, well, okay, let's touch on this. What do you want to get out of your visit? Yeah. I think ranking your priorities, you know, do you want to interact with students while you're there? Are you wanting to connect with faculty for a specific department? Are you wanting to do some type of audition? Do you want to see what the residence halls look like? So really make sure that you prioritize those things. Generally, the information session and tour that Caitlin was talking about earlier is going to cover all of these things. But at Elon, for example, we have an amazing music theater program. We can't highlight every single program on our tour. So we have students who will ask, you know, I'm very interested in music theater. Can I go do that specialty tour? I'd love to connect with a professor in our engineering department. Can we schedule that separately as well? So these are things that you can always ask for. It does need to be done typically well in advance. I would say at least 2 weeks. But to the next point, that's the importance of planning ahead for some of these things. If you want to meet with an admissions counselor, if you want to do some type of classroom visit, I think that's an amazing type of experience to have for students. Parents, you can go do your own thing during that time frame. Mm-hmm. But students, for you to get to see what it feels like to sit in that classroom. How are students interacting with one another and with the professor? Is it a professor or is it a TA? That's really important for you to get to see. So if you can take advantage of some type of classroom visit, I think that's huge. While you're on campus, you're going to be walking around. You're going to be potentially meeting with someone who reviews your college application if you end up applying there. Dress appropriately, comfortable shoes for walking. You know, don't wear Michigan State sweatshirt when you're going to go see Elon at an Ohio State. So that's it's true. It's not the end of the world. But I think be mindful. Yes, exactly. And while you're going to learn a lot about that institution while you're on campus, you should maybe know what a Buckeye is, or you know, ask what a Buckeye is, but have a sense for, you know, you're about to walk onto a large college campus or a small college campus. You don't want to ask those foundational questions in a tour. Maybe, you know, use some time ahead of time to get that information so you can ask about the more specific programs. You know, if you're asking about our engineering program, asking the question of tell me about engineering is very broad. But if you say, you know, talk to me more about your mechanical engineering programs and what students do for research, that's much more specific and hopefully much more telling. And finally, be flexible. Schedules change. We had an event on campus a few weeks ago, and was it Hurricane Ian that came through earlier? The East Coast Hurricane Ian came through, and we didn't get the hurricane, but we got a lot of rain. We got a lot of flooding and a lot of wind. So we had to cancel a lot of events that happened on campus that weekend. So you have to know life happens, but we hope, you know, that you'll still get to experience campus at a general point, but that you'll still hopefully, you know, be flexible and understand that life is point. So
we want we put your safety first.
Yes.
I once had a family that drove through flooding to meet with me when it did not matter or impact their application at all. So yeah, definitely
just be safe.
Take care of your own safety. Going back, sorry, one more, is just kind of, I really want to drive home just kind of like, what do you want to get out? Mostly because I think it'll help you really set the understanding of kind of the focus and the intention of that visit too. I think it's really important, you know, maybe as a family you just want to see where, and maybe having everyone in the family seeing what they want to get out of the visit. Maybe parents really want to see where you're going to live. Maybe you want to know where you're going to study. Maybe one parent wants to know what the surrounding area is like. What is safety like on that campus, right? So everyone might have different questions going into your college visit. So I would make sure that maybe there's questions that you can, that everyone in your family has and writes down that you ask at every college. So that can be something that you go back and kind of compare notes on. And then, you know, maybe there's specific college or questions that you're going to ask for each college at every single one. So be strategic. I think the more planning that you can do, the more useful you'll find that you'll use your time. A couple other things I want to add too is that there are some times where even if we don't offer an information session or tour, kind of that traditional visit, you could still meet with an academic program and they might be able to offer you something unique. Or an advisor, sit down with them. Especially at a big campus like ours, I'm probably going to direct you out to maybe some of those individual programs, and they might be able to set up what time with a faculty member. I had a student who reached out to me asking about music specifically, and then they got a whole slew. They got to go on field with the marching band during a game. They got to witness a practice. They got to do all of these other things, and I was like, send pictures. Like, that sounds cool. I want to see all of that. And Ohio State has a really big, really incredible marching band. So it was really exciting to see just by the student asking and reaching out to see what was possible. That's the experience that they ended up having on their tour. The other thing I love is that especially sometimes at majors at certain institutions that they want to grow or want to see more, you know, geographic or just diversity in general. We have an agriculture program at our institution. So they'll actually do a whole visit for a day. You'll get to sit in a class. You'll get paired with a student who is a plant biology major, or you know, do all of these really unique things, and you get to have a really specialized experience to see what it's like. My campus is 46,000 students. To really see what it's like on a really individualized level is a really special thing. So I think that that really kind of can impact you. And really make an impression and just show you how special the institution is and maybe how much they really want you. They're going to roll out whatever that school colors carpet to show you everything they got because they really want to show you how special it is and how special it is that you're visiting and taking that time too. I do that all the time. All right. So, other questions you should be asking. So, I think this is just kind of start getting some of the gears rolling in terms of other questions that might be on that list that you're going to be searching through, right? So this is maybe for that individualized time with the admissions counselor or with the academic advisor or with the department, whatever it might be. I think this is some of the things, or that you ask to the individual students that you meet on campus. I've had plenty of times where families have told me, yeah, well, the students were so nice. We just asked them what their favorite place was to eat on campus or something like that. And they told us and they directed us and walked us all the way down, you know. Things like that can happen, right? But I think it's important to talk about the academics and activities. I know that you all are some of the last ones that have gone through COVID-19, acknowledging that experience that you had during your high school experience. So, you know, asking, how will my 2020 and spring 2021 grades be evaluated? That's definitely a valid question. We want to make sure you get all those questions answered about that. Fun stuff. What do students do on the weekends, right? You're living there as a student. This is how you spend your time. It's a little bit more freedom than it is in high school, but you're still kind of wanting to make sure that you're taking advantage of what's available. So I know some of my students go to concerts, they'll go to Columbus Blue Jackets hockey games, they'll take advantage of discounted tickets and other things like that. What do students do, right? What's around in the city? How is that going to play a role in your experience?
On the flip side of the activities part is, I think it's important to ask what the academic climate is like. You know, yes, students are involved and taking advantage of the local area and exploring, but you know, every college campus is different. Are students spending the majority of their time in the library? There's nothing wrong with that, but you as a student need to get a sense for what it is that you want. So I think asking about academic climate, you know, what's the workload like? And that may vary by major, in which case that's another great question to kind of follow up with. But I think really important to get a sense for how students spend their time, both outside and also inside the classroom as well. And that follows up also to other academic support. If you're a student who's coming off of an IEP or you need specialized support when it comes to taking exams, studying, having someone help you with note taking, should you need tutoring or help with paper, what does the university offer that's going to support you in that setting? Are faculty members available to have those conversations? Or are you going to be working more with a TA? Again, every institution is different. I'm sure we would have completely different answers for all of these questions, but I think it's really important to know what's available for you in that realm. And then finally, the admissions process is something that hopefully you're certainly going to get that information in a guided tour and info session. We want to give you all the information and, of course, then leave you with the directions for how you can submit your application to us. But particularly coming off of the pandemic, there's been a lot of changes in how college admissions runs today. Just the fact that locally here, the UCs, the Cal States are no longer utilizing test scores. That's something that has changed a lot. That conversation is still changing and evolving. So understanding the difference between test optional, test blind, test free admissions, and you all are still in an environment where those testing policies could continue to change. So really, really great questions to be asking while you're on campus or interacting with an admissions officer on how those policies are changing. All right, you can keep going, yeah. So we know that it is expensive to travel, certainly right now. We also know you have very busy schedules. You do not have to be visiting these campuses across the country right now. If you cannot afford to do so, again, that's not something that a college is going to hold against you. And if it is, maybe it's a college that you shouldn't be considering anyway, because they're not valuing you as a person and for your time and all of those things. Because of the pandemic, colleges had to get really creative in providing you with resources and ways to connect. So many of these virtual components are great ways to get a sense for a university, even if you can't be there. So many institutions still offer virtual campus tours or virtual information sessions. If you ever want to come to one at Elon, I do every Thursday at 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock. And sometimes you can even get into those school-specific programs. So if you want to hear from the School of Business or from our nursing program in particular. So those are still great resources to utilize. And when Caitlin and I can't be in person, there's only one of us to cover all of these high schools in California. Many of us will still offer virtual high school visits. I know we all have maybe a love-hate relationship with Zoom, and even if you are someone who hates it, it certainly has continued to unlock accessibility of reaching people. So we're always happy to provide a Zoom information session or even just a one-on-one session. So don't knock the virtual stuff. It's still helpful, still relevant, and still very readily available to you at your own schedule and at your own pace too, which I think is nice. So moving on, I think there are other ways that you can get sense for a college and a campus community without setting foot on campus. Many of us will offer informational interviews. An informational interview is different than an evaluative interview. You are meeting with an admissions officer because you are getting more information about the institution. Vice versa, we're probably getting a little bit more insight into you as well, but it's not necessarily something that's going to be taken into consideration in your own admissions process. So asking to connect with us one-on-one is a great way to just get a sense for the campus environment. More than anything, I think a student who's actually there right now, doing the thing that students you're hopefully going to be doing next year, is wonderful as well. Maybe there's a student who is from your high school, who's graduated, who is not there, that you can get in touch with. Ask Caitlin or myself, we are always happy to connect prospective students with current students, and they can give you a nice sense for what it's like to be a student in that campus community. Let's see, high school resources. Do you all in your district use Naviance still? No? What is it?
Just one school.
Just one school? So your high school will have, we're in the Sense Center, which at Mount Carmel, this is their college resource center. I know you guys go are coming from lots of different high schools, but there's going to be an office like this on your campus. So utilize resources that are here to, again, help you get a sense for that center, that space. The College Board, which is the organization that facilitates the SAT, they have an amazing resource called My Big Future. You use your same students, this is a student resource, you'll use your username and password that you utilize for the SAT. And if you've taken the exam already, great, your scores will populate in there and it'll kind of give you schools that are potentially a good match for you. But increasingly, schools are not looking at testing as often. So if you haven't taken the SAT, that's okay. You can still use My Big Future and you can change the filters for, I'm looking at in-state or out-of-state. I want a big school or a small school. I'm considering, something that is rural versus in the heart of a city. So there's lots of great resources and tools out there for you to gather that information if you're not getting it directly from the college. And that is a very trusted resource. Networking sites like LinkedIn, students may not be as familiar with this, parents probably a little bit more so. Type in the college that you're looking at, and you can click to see who are some notable alumni that are popping up on LinkedIn. And that's kind of an interesting way to see, who's in your area. I actually utilize that a lot to, word your network for sure. But I use that as a way to find alums in the San Diego area to talk with students. So I think that's kind of something that is maybe not as often thought of, but I think is a really unique way to get a sense for how much of an impact the university is having. And finally, students are probably a little bit more familiar with this, but I don't want to knock everyone's access or comfortability with social media, but everything from TikTok to Instagram, Facebook, there are lots of ways that you can get a sense for the day-to-day student life. I know at Elon we provide a lot of parent resources via Facebook, so you've got lots of ways. If you're not getting it from the campus, from the admissions officer, lots of other ways that you can kind of connect with the university setting.
Cool. So just wrapping it up with some final thoughts. But sign up, first off, if there's a school that you like, sign up for that particular school, go onto their website, their admissions website, there should be a spot to sign up. Just to get information, totally fine. Make sure it is an email address that you're ready to get a lot of email to. Maybe do a college-specific one. Parents can do this as well, just to get, should typically indicate that you're a parent looking for information. That's perfectly fine as well. But that will send you information on specific events, especially if you put a specific interest. Sometimes it'll give you marketing and tailoring information for business presentation that is related to that particular institution or other online or virtual things that we have. So we want to make sure that you have access to that. Take pictures on your tour and notes immediately following. It'll help you kind of keep everything fresh for you so you remember why you really enjoyed that experience or why it made that particular impression on you and what that might have been, because going back you're like, what was that tree in front of that door? Like, I don't remember what that was. So take notes. That could be really helpful. I think a really neat one is pick up a copy of this cool newspaper. First off, that's going to show you the writing abilities of the student staff who are hoping to become maybe write in the future, or maybe make that a profession or find it as a hobby. You can also find relevant thing of what's going on campus, the student perspective. What are they feeling? What's the pulse of campus? What's the energy? What are some of the hot topics on campus? Maybe there's a raise in tuition, or maybe they're wanting to raise money for a new student union. Kind of what is that atmosphere like? So I think that school newspaper is really, really helpful and a great tip to be able to kind of understand more about what the campus is like. Ask students where they study, or where they love to eat, or just any question for that matter, really. There's been all too many times where I go on a campus tour just kind of refresh my memory with people from campus, and no one really asks questions. And our tour guides, they vet them. They are the most talkative and, kinds of all over their places. They want to get to know you. And I always tell students, they might not be in the major that you want, but they're going to have friends that are, so they can talk to their experiences. My first institution, when I was an admissions counselor, I just talked about everything my friends did, which was pretty fun for me. So I got to share all of the things that they did and what they were doing now that they graduated. So just ask a lot of questions. And even as a parent or a student, go up to the tour guide and say, okay, what questions am I not asking? Because I love it, because I know that gives me a tip of saying, okay, what do I know after hearing our conversation? What should they really be asking? What's most relevant right now for the information they need? Maybe, especially for right now, I'd say, all right, it's the special scholarship application that you need to be aware of. Or it's how to check your application status portal and make sure every document is in on time, right? That can help lead to some really relevant questions and answers that maybe you didn't know to ask, and that's exactly why we exist. And then lastly, just kind of trust your gut. When you make that final decision, we're going to celebrate you. And that's what every college and staff, admissions staff, we would love for you to pick our respective institutions, but normally it's just we want you to be happy. And even if you choose the best thing that you can always change after that too. There was just the transferring presentation just right before this. You can transfer. There are other pathways. You can come back home. There will be pathways for you. And the only thing you can do is make the best decision with all the information that you have at that moment with the support of the people around you. So trust your gut in that respect. So great.
Awesome. We have a few more minutes. Does anyone have any questions? No question is a silly question. Yes.
So we have not started doing any college visits.
Yeah.
He's a sophomore. But just trying to understand is how many colleges does the average family visit? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah.
Is it just a couple? Do you do it as a sophomore and junior and senior, or what is that like?
I think it really just depends on your own experience, I mean, maybe you have a couple of top schools that okay, these are my dream schools. I'm going to do a virtual tour and just see what campus is like and see if that's somewhere where I could see. We have a great virtual tour, I assume you guys do as well. And that's a great first look, I would say that if you're, start visiting colleges, maybe when you're on travels, maybe there's a college right nearby, and that's just kind of a way to see, oh, that's where their college is about. But I would say now's a great time, but do it within a time that makes sense. Summer is a huge time for a lot of college visits, I would also say.
And summer can be hit or miss, because summer certainly fits into your schedule. We still have, a fully staffed tour guide staff on campus, so you're still going to talk with current students, but you don't necessarily get to see the college all of us. Summer is maybe a good time for a sophomore, because you're just trying to get a feel for what colleges are out there. Again, we're really lucky. Just here in San Diego, you've got the variety of public schools. You've got, San Diego State, UCSD. You have private school and University of San Diego. Those are all going to have different feels. So I would encourage you to start locally, see what it feels like on a college campus, hear what other families are asking, and try out the next school. Use our local schools as a practice ground, and then can kind of go from there. I will say that pre-COVID, this is a national number, but most families were spending about $15,000 on the college search and test prep process, and that is, to me, just a huge, inaccessible number. That's a lot of money to spend before you even apply to colleges, which can sometimes be $50 to $100 per application. The fact that we have now all of these wonderful virtual resources, I think, is huge. So maybe start there too. Yeah, great question.
So to be counted for demonstrated interest, do you have to actually register for visits for you to show up on campus and just move around?
We don't measure demonstrated interest, but I would highly recommend registering when possible.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to demonstrated interest, I imagine.
Yeah, so to get that check mark, right, of you being there, yes, you have to register ahead of time. And it could be even if you just happen to be in an area and you show up and you register day of, that will count. But if you take an informal tour of campus where you're just visiting a friend and you haven't checked in with the admissions office, we're not going to capture that. So just make sure that you are at some point checking in with admissions. We're almost done. Is that what you were going to say?
You're doing good. I actually had a comment as a high school counselor. For sophomores, I think, and our awesome presenter said it, those virtual options are really good. As a student, I'm from Connecticut, and I actually applied to Elon, and at that time, it was not accessible for my family to travel down to North Carolina, and the virtual option to tour the campus was very, it makes you feel like you're there, and then I can't imagine what the technology is now for you to really capture what it feels like to be on campus. So I would say if you're starting out, use those virtual options, and then as you get to junior year, senior year, and you narrow down what your prospective schools are, that might be a little easier than going to visit 20 schools versus 7 schools.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, question.
Well, I was just gonna piggyback on this question. Does a virtual tour count as demonstrated?
It does, because you're having to register for it. We capture your email, to send you the link, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say I know a lot of students end up, maybe when they're making their final decision, watch YouTube videos. I mean, some students make YouTube videos about their college experience, what living in the dorms is like. They're edited way fancier than I could ever do. Like, they're like 10 minutes long sometimes. I'm like, I don't want to watch that. My attention span would be out. But some people do. So, yeah, look up the school on YouTube when you're making that final decision. You know, dorm life, residence life. You'll find a blogger who will end up maybe giving some unique information from their perspective, but you'll get the best and most correct information from the source. So keep that in mind.
Other questions?
Well, thank you all so much for making the
Good luck
time.
in this college year process.
Yes.
You got good luck.
There's no